As far as I know, that the process for the off-duty jobs, the way it was being handled was for like 60 years. It was already set in stone the way. I mean, we had a few written like regulations, but they were very loose, very vague, and they were never enforced, very rarely. There was an inquiry at around 07, 08, and the Hudson County Prosecutor's Office. It's funny because they had a lot of the guys that, that I got in trouble with, and they got off with nothing, scot-free. They just they got a slap on the wrist, they got transferred around, maybe lost days here and there, but that's it.
So the prosecutor's office knew that something was going on, but they kind of just let things slide?
They let things slide. They knew what was going on. They knew. They absolutely knew. And it's not just that they knew, the whole department knew, and they brushed it off. If I'm not mistaken, he took over, oh God, maybe 05, 07 maybe. But he was always involved because when he used to work at the front desk, he would field the calls. And when you walk into the precinct, there's the front desk and the desk lieutenant. And he would field the calls for the off-duty guys, and sometimes he would just cover the jobs himself or just give the jobs out. He had full knowledge, but he implied to us, I don't want to hear nothing, know nothing, do anything, just keep it out of my face. So he absolutely knew what was going on. Well, you know what? No, because he was always very careful. Mm-hmm. And he would say, well, come in here and talk to me, but, he covered his bases. He would it was always implied, I know what's going on and do this and do that, but I don't want to know about it type of deal. That's how he was. The housing stuff was kept real private. The housing stuff was only for street crimes, narco guys, and they were only privy to that. The only reason I knew was because a handful of times they couldn't cover it, so I worked that housing detail, but I was there in the Hudson Gardens when we had it. As far as Marion and stuff, they all had all these other jobs, Holland Gardens, etc. But the only people privy to that were street crimes, narco. Those people were privy to that. I'll tell you what happened with me and this was the common practice, so I'm just gonna tell you. I would work, let's say I would work in Journal Square, I would patrol my shift 4 to 12. And then at that time, the off-duty system, there wasn't really it wasn't checks and balances. Nobody checked. So I would work in Journal Square, my patrol shift, and then work the Journal Square detail, which was essentially patrolling the square for the Journal Square SID. And since they paid you with check to you, made out directly to you, it was like, it was free money pretty much. All you had to do was be around when they called you. If they called you, you took care of a call, and you were already there. So it's not like you're not there. It's not a no-show job. You were there working both jobs. And that went unchecked for years. I believe it was like 07, 08, give or take. That's when the voucher system came into play.
And that was after, I guess, what happened with the prosecutor's office investigation.
And then that's when the city tacked on a $5 per hour fee of their admin for whatever reason. And that's when they started collecting. Because before that, there was no admin fee. The vendor, the contractor would directly call the clerk or whoever was doing the schedules, and they gave out the jobs, and they either paid us in cash, money order, or check. I was always here. In all my years being here, I think I was out sick a handful of times, and I was here. So nobody could say I had a no-show job. I was just here working too many at a certain time. But were there no-shows? Yeah, absolutely. But it wasn't like exclusively one no-show, one double dip. It was like a mixture of all of them.
Let's come in. What year would you say that you knew that they started investigating what was going on with off-duty?
To be honest with you, I was oblivious to all this stuff, and until I got approached in 2016, I thought it was business as usual. I had no idea what was going on. But I'm gonna tell you they've been here for a long time. From what I understand, they were here for at least 5-6 years prior to that, at least.
So 2010, 2011.
Yes, 2010, 2011, around that time frame. I'll tell you, I speak for myself. I was definitely double dipping, and the other, and Nico was double dipping, and Card was double dipping, and the other guys were pretty. The other guys were no shows.
The other guys were no shows.
Yeah, with no shows.
So guys like O'Leary and whatnot.
No show.
And as far as what their scam with the no show, were they were paying a kickback or something?
From what I understand, they were no show jobs that the vouchers were being put in, and when they got the off duty check, they would give a percentage back to the pickmaster. He was putting in no show jobs, no show vouchers for Mike, and he was like, Mike, just go, make believe you go over there, and I'll say you were on paper, and on paper you really were, because it wouldn't coincide with your shift, so you weren't double dipping. You were getting paid for a no show job, and he'd get a percentage kickback, and that's what got him jammed up for the bribery, for taking a bribe. No, not at all. Mike, he just got roped in, that time.
What about some of the other guys like Abdelaziz?
He got roped in. He never really worked jobs like I did, and I'll say me because I'm the one speaking, so I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm gonna speak the facts.
So who were the guys that you would say were roped in versus you would classify yourself more in this sense of a media or someone that was just constantly at it. It was something that you were involved with. But guys, so some of the other guys like O'Leary, you would say roped in. There was Abdelaziz. He got roped in.
Vic Sanchez, he got roped in.
Chris Ortega.
He got roped in too.
He got roped in.
Yeah, he got
So you wouldn't say that a guy like Chris Ortega was necessarily, he wasn't immediately, who were the guys that were the guys who got pulled in? You, Nico, Cardinali. You guys were the real, and Romaniello.
We were like the top ones.
You were the top ones, and everybody else was kind of just roped in. What about now there's three people, or like Ortman, you'd say he got roped in? Or
As a matter of fact, Ortman got roped in by Nico.
Yeah. And who else are we missing here? There was a couple. Fahrenholtz. She was a meat eater though, or was
she was a meat eater.
So she was definitely
absolutely.
All right. What about? And now there was three other people. There's a Gisela Sanchez, Melissa Sanchez.
She got roped in. Gisela got roped in.
And Alex
Melissa got roped in. Vilas got roped in. But to my knowledge, they were never charged with any federal crime. So the city's just railroading them right now. That's my opinion.
Dave Leon.
I wouldn't say he was a meat eater, but he worked, but he was a little bit involved, but he might have been roped in too.
Would you say Cardinali and Nico were like you, working double, triple dipping?
Absolutely.
They weren't necessarily stealing time. They were stealing, but they were still showing up. You could see them. If you were in the city and if I'm in Jersey City and I need to find Juan Berrios,
right. We were always around. We never really, we were always around. We were just working too many jobs at once.
Jeff Rodriguez was caught up. He was involved with it.
Very early on.
Very early.
Would
you say that he left Jersey City eventually? And the rumor was he was a pastry chef. Now he's supposedly a cop in some beachside town in California.
That's the rumor, right?
That's the rumor. Mm-hmm. What would you say about his involvement? Do people see him as a snitch in all this?
Absolutely. Then I also heard that when he was first approached, he obtained legal counsel and then he resigned. And that was weird because it raised the flag. Why would you leave a job making $200,000 a year and just get up and leave? So the rumors were out flying and the accusations, and that's when he was labeled a snitch.
Have you heard anything from him since?
Just not a peep. But I do heard he has some friends that still talk to him, and I heard he's well off where he is, wherever he is. It's my opinion only, but I think that the housing stuff is a little harsher because I think they should have been there in uniform patrolling those housing projects and whatever duty that entailed. With us, it was a little different. I mean, again, it was wrong to do, but it was just the mentality and it was just a little different. It's disgusting. You're gonna tell me that a cop that he was old school, and I'll say old school because if he's on the job for 40 years, he knew what was going on. So to me, that's a slap in the face. Again, and I'm going to reiterate this again, I'm not saying I'm innocent. I did it. I get it. But 23 months and the chief gets 6 months house arrest, that's a miscarriage of justice, I feel. Absolutely. You're going to tell me if you're the precinct commander, you have these two guys that you had no idea what was going on? Come on.
I'm going to say a name for you. Edgar Martinez, you think he'd be a good chief?
Negative.
Any reason why?
He's too authoritative. He's like a dictator, man. He's not flexible. You can't talk to him. He's not approachable. These other guys like Bubba or even Phil, they were more approachable. Him, he's like a brick wall, man. He don't want to listen to anything. My opinion, again, is my opinion only.
Yeah.
I think Cowan was a great chief. And I say that because he looked out for the patrol guys. Now, from what I understood, again, this is from what I understood at the time, he was going to regulate the off-duty and have it, he was going to draw up like some type of plan that he had to make it less corruptible and to have more accountability with bosses. Somehow, when he was the chief, I think if he would have done that and they would have implemented that, we wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here right now. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be here looking at what I'm looking at. And Bubba Cowan, I know a lot of people hated him. I respected him. I got along with him. You know, he always treated me right. I did the right thing by him. But at that time, I understood he had a plan to make the off-duty less corruptible, and they scrapped it. And then when then he left and he retired, and then they made Phil Zacche chief, they never implemented it. And it just business as usual. That's just the way it was.
So what I wanted to do, I wanted to see, again, let's go backwards to 2013, October, November, even September, when the ordinance was being discussed, placing the entire off-duty program under Director Zacche, okay, essentially taking the chief out of it. So there were meetings, of course, because it was a transition, and there was pickmasters. Like we all know the stories. You had the story; they're all in your paper. There were pickmasters. A lot of them guys were hardworking cops. You know, regardless of what they did. You know, on the good stuff they did, I have a lot of respect for. A lot of the guys were good cops on the street. You know, they just ended up.
Would you put Berrios in that conversation?
Yeah. Juan was a hard worker, but again, you know, it's twisted. You know how what they did is what they did. You know, I don't. But I like to also look at the good that the officers did. So in any event, I was at meetings with Director Zacche and some of these pick guys, and he's banging on the table. We got to get the cops out of these off-duty jobs. They can't. The mayor doesn't want any police officers involved in running off-duty jobs. He wants everybody out in the street. Now, that was just a political position by Mayor Philip. Okay, that was a political, because you couldn't run the police off-duty job system without police officers. I believe they brought one guy in, and he thought it was a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 job. It just doesn't work that way, because jobs come in 24/7. Whether a pipe bursts on Tunnelly Avenue, whether a building collapses and you need off-duty coverage on Wegman Parkway. So what I said was, you can't do this. You need to keep the cops here, but what you need is a command structure, Director, because you're putting probably upwards or even more than 135 police officers and supervisors a day out into the street. I mean, I was around in 9/11. I was on this side of the Hudson. Jim Shea was on the other side of the Hudson. Our initial responding officers, 100 plus, were coming from off-duty jobs, myself included. So I says, what you need is more police officers. We need commanders. We need a commander, be it a captain or a deputy chief. I would go with a captain, a lieutenant, as like the executive officer, almost like a precinct-sized command structure, and 2 sergeants, one for the south and the west, one for the north and the east. And then these other officers work under them. Okay? This way you have a check, and you have accountability, and you have a check against corruption.
I would say to them, and I speak for myself, yeah, I made a mistake, and I own to that. I own up to the 100%. I'm not saying I did it. I didn't say I didn't do it. Yeah, I did it, but you guys have to understand, before you even came to this place, the system was already corrupt for decades, 60, 70 years. So I was only doing as I was told, because if I didn't do what I did, I really wouldn't have the things I had and to help provide for my family. And although that doesn't sound exactly kosher or 100%, but that's just the truth. That's just the way it was. I love Jersey City. I was born and raised here. You know, again, I'm gonna say it again for the 10th time. I'm sorry. I take full responsibility for what I did. And my only gripe is this could have been handled differently. If they knew the system was corrupt 60 years ago, why not fix it? Why wait till the feds came? Now, it hurt a lot of people, and there's no going back. When I get out, it's gonna be tough for me to pick up my life. You know, I'll do what I need to do, but it's gonna be real tough.